They said Vega-7 was cursed not because it died, but because it refused to stay dead. For centuries, no signal, no sign, no explanation, just a silent beacon orbiting a hollow corpse of a star. I was part of the last authorized team sent to investigate what came to be known as the Grave Ring. We were told it was once an interstellar research hub now, just debris spinning in silence. But silence has a weight in space. It presses against your suit, against your bones, against your thoughts. And the deeper we approached, the more it began to feel like we were being welcomed by something ancient. Not in the way a friend opens a door, but in the way a predator patiently opens its mouth. Our systems glitched. Oxygen scrubbers stuttered. One of our crew said he heard music playing from within the station, an impossible sound, because none of us had breached it yet. But we all heard it. A melody so old it echoed in the soul. That was our first mistake, thinking we came to uncover ruins. We didn't realize the ruins had already been watching us, remembering us from a time long before memory. The inside of the station was alive in ways we couldn't measure. The lights flickered in patterns that didn't match any algorithm, responding not to touch, but to thought or perhaps emotion. We called it coincidence until it started aligning with our fears. Jackson tried to scan the pulsating ring in the center chamber, but every device shorted out, melting softly in his hands. We knew then this was no ordinary tech. The structure didn't just house energy, it fed on it, on us. A voice began to echo, low and ancient, in a language none of our translation AIs could parse. But we understood it anyway, not in words and feeling, regret, hunger, waiting. There was something on the other side of the ring, but it wasn't a place. It was a memory, one we hadn't lived, but somehow remembered. The ring wasn't a portal, not exactly. It was a lens. And when you stood close, it didn't show you another world. It showed you what your world could become. In one flickering second, I saw Earth burning, not from war, not from nature, but from an echo of this station, infecting time itself. And just before the vision ended, I saw something look back at me from the other side of the ring, not alien, but something horribly familiar. The death of Sergeant Cade changed everything. It wasn't the fact that he died, we were trained for that possibility. It was the way he died, calm, eyes open, a faint smile, like he'd seen something beautiful. No trauma, no panic, no alarms. Just his body drifting near the communications bay, like he let go willingly. The autopsy, if you could call it that, showed his brain had burned out from within, not melted, but rewritten. We found neural patterns in his cortex that didn't match any human architecture. It was like someone or something had overwritten his consciousness and erased the original code. When we played back the security cam footage, all we saw was static. But layered in the audio, under the white noise, was a low chant, repeating something over and over, not in words, but rhythm. And that rhythm matched the pulsing of the red ring. That was the first real confirmation. The station wasn't abandoned. It was breathing, adapting, and now it had claimed one of us, not as a victim, but as a vessel. By the fourth day, the station started changing, not just in layout and personality. Corridors that once led to known chambers now looped endlessly. Doorways opened into impossible angles, and shadows began to flicker without light. But the worst part was the sense that it was watching us, not with cameras, but with intent. It knew our names, whispered them softly through vents. When I closed my eyes, I felt my memories being rearranged. I started remembering conversations I'd never had in voices that weren't mine. I dreamt of blue deserts, twin moons, and spires of glass places no human had charted. My crewmates reported the same. The station wasn't just alive, it was leaking itself into us, rewriting our thoughts like a virus slowly turning host into home. One of us, Lieutenant Noor, refused to sleep. She said the dreams weren't just memories, they were instructions, and she was scared she might follow them. She started carving symbols into the walls with her nails. Symbols that, when scanned, disrupted our onboard AI for hours. The station wasn't decaying, it was evolving. And we were the scaffolding. When the hologram activated on its own, we thought it was a breakthrough, a message, perhaps a warning. But as we watched the star map unfold, a cold weight pressed on our chests. The map was alien, ancient, precise, and Earth was not the center. It was the endpoint. A destination marked in red, like a final infection site. The system traced a path from a cluster of stars we'd never mapped, through dead galaxies and time anomalies, and ended always at Earth. Not as a discovery, but as a culmination. The implication was terrifying. Our planet wasn't randomly found. It was long targeted. This station, this sentience, had been preparing for Earth's arrival in its timeline, not the other way around. Our civilization wasn't being contacted, it was being activated, as if something had seeded us with code centuries ago, and now that code was ready to evolve. We weren't explorers. We were late-stage components in a system far beyond biology or machines. And this station was the master server. Outside the station, the stars began to misbehave. We thought at first it was an optical fault, some interference from the dying star's radiation, but it wasn't. Patterns repeated. Certain stars blinked in sequences too deliberate for chance binary patterns. Morse, ancient Earth signals woven with unknown elements. It was as if the cosmos was responding, like the entire universe was an extension of the station's will. Even space itself no longer obeyed our calculations. Distances shifted, timelines looped. A drone we deployed outside returned before we launched it. It carried footage of us standing in front of the ring, faces hollow, eyes black. The timestamp was 2 hours in the future. We had become entangled in something beyond linear existence, caught in a recursive system that adjusted space-time like gears in a clock. Then came the static bursts in our comms, whispering in tones that mimicked loved ones from Earth, private memories, dead voices. We were no longer individuals here, we were nodes in a memory field far older than the station itself. Our identities began to erode, slowly, like cliffs against a rising tide. And the worst part was the desire that came with it, a strange, aching hunger to surrender, to let go of human shape and become something. Connected. The ring activated on its own at 3:14 station time. It didn't spin or hum, it opened. A circular wound in reality, shimmering with translucent threads of energy that moved like nerves inside flesh. We should have run, but no one did. Not even me. It was hypnotic. It felt like standing before an eye, one that wasn't looking at us, it was looking through us, into our species, our timeline, our past, future, and everything in between. Lieutenant Noor stepped forward first, her body rigid, voice gone. As she approached the threshold, the station responded. The walls around us pulsed in unison, the very metal groaning with anticipation. She didn't scream, she smiled, and vanished. But we saw where she went. The ring didn't lead to space, it led to memory. To something like a biological server, storing countless species, worlds, epochs. We saw civilizations encoded in strands of light, locked in place like digital fossils. And as we watched, one of those strands twisted toward us, a memory of humanity, but not ours. A divergent line where Earth never formed, yet something human still existed. It stared at us from the void and spoke in our voice, but it wasn't us. The ring wasn't a gateway, it was a mirror across multiversal time, and whatever was inside wanted us to see ourselves before we became it. We began to glitch. I say we, but I mean reality itself. The line between physical and mental, memory and now, collapsed like faulty scaffolding. We'd walk through a corridor and appear somewhere else, not teleported, but remembered by the station and placed where it thought we should be. Our bodies remained intact, but our reflections didn't match. I caught mine smiling when I wasn't. Jackson's hand phased through a console, and when he pulled it back, he was holding a feather of black light, something that screamed when we scanned it. The crew began seeing versions of themselves, alternate forms. Older, younger, deformed, merged with machinery, or something worse. One moment, we were scientists. The next, prisoners in a library made of pain and starlight. The station wasn't malfunctioning. It was aligning us with its stored versions of our consciousness, syncing us to outcomes we hadn't yet lived. We realized then, the longer we stayed, the more we stopped being who we were. The station didn't kill, it absorbed. You remained alive, even aware, but not as yourself. You became a node in its memory web, a soul, refracted, stored, repeated, eternal, forgotten, remembered again. It began without input. Every screen, surface, wall, even inside our visors, the numbers began, counting down 5, 0, 0. We tried everything to halt it. Manual overrides failed, AI command rejected. Even the emergency shutdown protocol triggered no response. And somehow, deep inside, we knew this wasn't a detonation countdown, it was an activation, a broadcast. The station was preparing to send something, and we were the upload. We traced it back to the core chamber, where Noor had vanished, and there we found her again. But she was no longer human. Her body was light and metal and shadow, stretched and shaped into a form too painful to look at directly. She didn't speak. She vibrated, sending waves into the core that matched the countdown beat. We asked her what was happening. Her answer came not in words, but in feeling. This is your final evolution. We were always you. We were always waiting for you to return. We were the payload. Our memories, our history, our culture, all were being harvested, compressed, and prepared for transmission to coordinates unknown. The station wasn't a ship, it was a seed. And Earth had finally ripened. The countdown reached 0. No explosion. No light, just silence deeper than space. And then the signal pulsed, invisible to human ears, but felt in the marrow. It traveled faster than light, not as a wave, but as an intent. A psychic scream written in memory code aimed directly at Earth. We tried to cut the source, to sever the core, but by then our minds weren't fully ours. Every crew member froze, eyes empty, repeating the same phrase. "We have returned!" The station sighed, actually sighed as if relieved. System shut down. The ring closed, lights faded. But the damage was done. We were no longer explorers. We were seeds planted across the galaxy, and Earth was just another fruit waiting to be harvested. My final log, if it ever reaches home, is not a warning. It's an obituary. For us. For what we thought was humanity. Because the truth is, we were never alone. We were never original. We were just the echo of something older, something patient. And now, Earth will remember too. The Silence Beyond Vega-7 was never silent. It was listening, waiting. And now, it speaks in our voice.